Here at the Peep Show podcast, we talk a lot about supporting sex workers. And one way you can support sex workers is by paying for your porn.
Why not take this opportunity to support queer porn made by queer porn stars? Queerporn.tv is offering $10 memberships all summer long. Being a Queerporn.tv VIP guest grants you access to all of their exclusive scenes featuring all kinds of queer hotties from around the world. We love it, and we know you will too. Welcome to the Peep Show podcast.
News and stories from the sex industry.
With Jesse and PJ Sage. Welcome back to another episode of the Peep Show podcast. Today we talk to Arabelle Raphael about her varied sex work career, negotiating relationships as a sex worker, and art as catharsis.
Hey, I'm Adrian, one of the hosts of After Adult Podcast. My porn name should be Mozart Fremont, but you probably know me better by my actual porn name, Siri.
I'm Rachel, but my porn name would be Woody 16th Avenue.
After Adult is a podcast about life and porn.
I don't actually watch porn.
I don't really watch that much porn either. I probably watch more than you, but I mean, most of the time it kind of would feel like going to work on my day off.
You 100% watch more than me, because I don't watch porn. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for After Adult.
Or visit afteradult.com and follow us on Instagram at afteradult.
We're here today with Arabelle Raphael, so thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, can you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do?
I have been a sex worker in some capacity for 10 years. These days, I am a content creator, but I've done all kinds of other stuff. And I co-founded BOSS, Bay Area Workers Support, back in 2018, post Sesta Fosta, or when Sesta Fosta was.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So what do you do with BOSS?
I no longer am part of BOSS, but I founded it. I still help them out with stuff, but I can't say that I run anything there anymore.
I actually have the same relationship to SWAT Pittsburgh.
yeah, I'm like, but I am down to like pitch in and help out.
yeah, that's where I am too. You can only run, I think, something for so long until it's a good idea to kind of step back from it and let other people step into it.
Right.
Yeah. So how did you start in sex work?
The first, I guess, how it first started was just, I was a nude model.
Mm-hmm.
And I just became more and more curious in producing more graphic imagery, honestly. So I decided to apply to a bunch of porn sites.
Okay.
And that's kind of how I got started.
I've actually always wanted to be a nude model, but I've never done, like, for art classes and things like that. But for some reason, I've never been able to figure out how to fall into that.
Right.
I was going to say, you've done your fair share of nude modeling.
Okay, yeah. I haven't done it in the way that I thought you were talking about it.
Yeah, we should ask that. So were you talking about like art modeling or like what was that initial modeling?
Yeah. For me, it was mostly like fetish photography work. So
Gotcha.
an art photography, but it was all photography.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes even that's kind of a form of sex work, right? Like depending on who the photographer is, sometimes that can like slip into the gray area of the photographer being like a pseudo client, right?
Yeah, it's a great one. I have I have hesitancy of calling it that as someone who did it, but it's you're not wrong. Like
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
it is. I think that was a perfect way of saying it. It's like a weird gray. It's a gray area,
Yeah.
but you're totally right. Like
I remember going to a shoot one time and having the photographer spend the whole 2 hours, talking about how he's managing or negotiating with his wife this job that he's doing. And it felt like and I'm sitting there naked, listening to him tell his story
You're
about
like, dude, you
him
could
and
just
his
comment
wife.
on my night flirt line, but okay, we'll do this.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's not really what I signed up for, but here we are.
When you kind of moved into doing porn, was that like in the Bay Area? Were you working with like Bay Area studios or?
Yeah. It was through the Bay at first. Well, actually, just my first scene, and my first scene was not awesome. So I did that, and then unfortunately, lost my home. Like because I did it.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, I kind of like was like, oh, I did this thing. And then I just like was like, okay, well, I need to make money. I don't have a home. And then I could just kind of like went full into like sex work. So it was definitely like out of curiosity and then like definitely out of necessity.
Right.
When you say that like it wasn't awesome, like what was that first experience like?
Yeah. I mean, basically I had, I didn't know anything at all.
Right.
I didn't know any other sex workers I did know sex workers, but it had been from like, forever ago, and it wasn't, no one that did porn. And so, yeah, I just got paid like ridiculous, like unbelievable low amount. And unfortunately, like had like talent agent, like cross boundaries and didn't end up going and doing what I like had agreed to. And I basically got paid very, very low to have sex with one of the top porn performers and predators at the time.
Okay, yeah.
Been seen outside for like no money. So like it was definitely like I definitely got like super taken advantage of. And like that's, unfortunately, when a lot of businesses, including unpaid internships, take advantage of folks that don't know, and so that kind of thing. And so then right after that, I actually didn't work in the Bay for much in porn and started doing Los Angeles porn.
Gotcha.
Like a couple months after.
Okay.
I mean, maybe a good follow-up question to that, just because we do have like a lot of younger models who listen to us, a lot of people who maybe started in camming and are thinking of going into doing some studio porn, at least, when this whole COVID thing passes. Do you have any thoughts about like what younger models should be thinking about when they find themselves in a similar situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think, some of it is just like being kind of young and not knowing how to like, I guess figuring out how to communicate your boundaries is really important before you go in this. I mean, that's not always the case, but if you have the chance to do that and like really figure out what you're okay with and what you're not okay with and what your boundaries are and learn how to actually speak up for yourself, which is hard when you're really young, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I learned those communication skills like way later.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then like 21, where I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Yeah, and also, I mean, if you can and if you can afford it, this also, comes with like a good amount of privilege is like, I would maybe pay like a couple people and do consultations, like find out as much information as you can, because I definitely went in like completely like there was nothing for me to compare it to. And I know that there is more out there now, and I'm pretty sure 8-Pack released a video of some kind for like new models. I don't know if that's still out there. I would check that out.
Yeah, I heard that too, and I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's a while ago.
It was wild. Yeah.
We should dig that up.
How was the LA scene different? Was it a lot different to shoot in LA than in the Bay Area?
From yes and no. So the Bay, you've got like the queer feminist porn, and then you've got kink, and then I think that's it now. Like there was more, but it was all like, quote unquote feminist. I do say that with quotations. I do think it is a branding, and it doesn't necessarily mean the work is.
Right.
Yeah. And but there was a lot more going out here like 10 years ago than there is now. Like, there's, not even all of kink is out here now. So
right.
So the difference was just definitely like, I mean, aesthetics and approach and whatever. I found like both like, negatives and positives about both.
Yeah.
Honestly, but definitely like just definitely different vibe for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm definitely more aligning in with like politics and that kind of stuff. I also made way more money in LA than I would shooting for anything in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
Pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I think a couple months into that, so yeah, I like then ended up getting a job camming for Kink Live for a bit.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
You remember Kink Live? Yeah, so it was like one of the OG Kink Live models.
Was that done like at the infirmary
Or
or
the Armory.
the armory? Yeah.
Get fun infirmary.
Yeah. Was that like a Freudian slip?
Yeah, I think it was. Was that done at the armory?
Fetish things are, I mean, it's not too far off. Yeah, it was in the armory. Like so it depended on what shifts you do, but like sometimes I would sleep there because my shift would be till like 1, or it'd start at 1 a.m. and end at like 7.
Holy cow! Wow.
Oh yeah, I was running 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Mhm.
what was it like to sleep there? Did you have like a cot or something?
It sucked. They had rooms, so what they used to do, the armory does not exist, right? It will
Right.
exist, but it's not a thing anymore, right? So what they used to do is, when they got like talent from LA, they would put them up at the armory itself. So they had a bunch of bedrooms.
Gotcha.
Technically, the owner used to live there like for years,
Mm-hmm.
until I don't even know if he's still the owner, but people like lived in that building for sure.
Mhm.
And stayed there. And so they had a couple rooms. They made the local model room where we like slept with bunk beds. And at the time, Kink is a very different company than it was then. It was definitely a really like party heavy scene.
Yeah.
Like it is really not, I mean, it's not even a scene now. Everybody's dispersed. It's really just like individual directors submitting in content,
Right.
Right.
It's not this like world and community that it was. But so it was very party heavy. So actually sleeping there sucked. Because you'd be like working and there'd be either an upper floor or there would be like a private sex party or whatever. And people would be going like raging, while you're trying to sleep. After beating yourself online for like 4 hours.
Yeah, and then you're not in the mood to go into a sex party after that, right?
Exactly.
Can you talk a little bit about like the model of Kink Live and how that worked?
So there's different like incarnations, right? So there was the very, very first, like the first couple months, and I don't really know how that went.
Mhm.
I came in pretty new, so like I think they only had like 3 models working that before. It was like Cherry Torn and like 2 others, right?
Mhm.
So I don't know what the business model was then. Then when I started working there, you sat in a thing. There was like a little preview, and if people wanted to see anything, they had to pay. And no matter what, you got paid $150
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
to do the thing. Then they switched that over, which caused some issues, and there was like a labor organizing movement that started and then was squashed and went to court. So that changed, and that was a big to do. And then I think you just made they took a percentage. I can't remember what the percentage was, but you didn't get like
Yeah.
payment necessarily. And then they slowly, expanded that to like Los Angeles, and it was a separate location, or I think they had 2. And then I think they just sold it off completely. And then I think maybe, I don't remember who bought Kink Live, but they ended up selling it off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting because it sounds like, I don't know, that transition, like it ended up looking kind of more like what we think of, campsites today.
Totally.
Looking like, but initially, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, initially it sounds, more like it was like old school peep shows or stripping or something where you actually had like a guaranteed wage, which.
Yeah. No, it definitely had more of that vibe. And speaking of peep shows, at the same time, I was dancing in a peep show. I basically was like, I did porn. And then I was like, I'm weird and I can't because I am like, as much as like I have a following now, it's a small following for how long I've been doing this. If you think about it,
Mhm.
it was sometimes people are like, oh, you have a big one. I'm like, but this was 10 years.
A big following.
You compare it. No, I'm sorry, but you can take and 19-year-old that's done porn for 6 months, and she will have a bigger following than I have what I've been doing for 10 years. It just is what it is. Like, that's the setups. There's some people, whatever. So I was not, a favorable or whatever. I was not what mainstream porn wanted.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I was like, okay, I'm only getting gigs here and there. I need to make money. Kink Live had like reached out. I started doing that, and it was still like not quite enough. So I ended up working at the Lusty Lady.
Yeah. What was it like to work there?
It's funny. We used to call it our charity sex work. Obviously at the time I really needed it until I went through it.
Uh-huh.
We got paid $10 an hour to get naked, which was kind of like, meh. But I got to it was like hanging out in your big sister's room, We had this main stage, and it was like full of like super hot, badass, like a lot of queer sex workers just like hanging out.
That seems fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. The Lusty itself was like a rundown, like super seedy. And I really like that, actually.
I was just about to be like, sounds great.
Oh yeah, it was nothing. I mean, there was carpet, and those like, little booths.
Carpet seems like a very weird choice.
It was very upsetting.
Yeah, how do you clean that? I don't even.
And the booths were like, I saw what happened in those booths, and like while they got cleaned, like, I remember once I had a date, we were like, oh, let's go fuck, let's go to your job, let's go fuck in the, I'm like 21, that sounds like a job. Let's go look, go into one of the booths and fuck. And I remember trying to have sex with my partner and just like trying to touch the, hold myself on something and just like not being okay with having like my hand.
So gross.
But I was like awesome people. And I definitely like got a lot of education and community. Like that's definitely.
And that was after the Lusty Lady unionized, right?
Yeah. They'd been long unionized. They were unionized, and they were a co-op at this point too.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had Jane Swift on a long time ago, who worked there, I think in the Seattle one though, and then wrote a dissertation collecting all of these narratives of people who worked there.
Yeah, I think she's working on a book, like long term.
It was super interesting.
Yeah, doing an oral history. So I want to talk about peep shows because that's totally our namesake. But real quick, I wanted to ask one more question about Kink Live, because I was curious a little more about the setup of how they filmed. Like, it almost looked like that happened in like cells or something. Like, it had almost like a jail vibe, if I remember.
Yeah. But I mean, that was the whole armory, right? It was all like a BDSM fantasy. So like, yeah, it was dungeon-esque. So it was all like different rooms, and like there was one that was a little later, but they made it like bordello themed. There was another one, but most of them were just like, kind of a boring little room, and there's like chains and bullshit, like, all surrounding you. And yeah, they just had like a camera set up, and you had a little remote that you could zoom in and out of.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was one person that would work there to help you and clean up after you and all that stuff.
So, okay. So you mostly like manned or womaned or person that stuff yourself, but there was like somebody that kind of helped with some of that stuff.
Yeah, they would like clean up and set up everything for you, and then you turn it on, and then you would just like hop in, and then you just do your thing, and then they would clean up and stuff. And if you have an issue, there was the office that you could like go and get help if you needed it, or if you had to ban someone that was being like really obnoxious or something like that.
Oh, right. Okay. So you didn't like have the same level of control over like your chat room as maybe like
nothing like that. And you were only talking to one person at a time. It was very different than they later on turned it into a group chat situation. But back in the day, it was only a one-on-one private show. Like
okay.
Almost like StreamMate.
Yeah.
Is that what StreamMate does?
Yeah,
I've worked on. I mean, they do have a.
Well, the way that StreamMate works, or at least when I used to work on StreamMate, is that it would be a group setting, but you weren't allowed to take your clothes off or do anything sexual in that sort of public room, and then people would take you to private, and it would be like one person or maybe you could do a group show. I'm trying to remember, but like they had to pay to enter into a room in order for anything to happen.
I love that.
Yeah,
I
thought
prefer that
Jasmine
too.
was like that too.
I was terrible at it. I'm not a cam person.
I'm not either.
I don't have the personality. I'm not really good at it. I do cam shows for like my OnlyFans members.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Different.
Yeah.
And it just feels very different. And then I'll do like one-on-one Skype stuff, but like the like cam world, like my free cams and all that stuff, like that's hot. It's hot. First of all, it's hard.
It is hard.
Hard. And I like definitely don't have the personality for that kind of hustle too. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, I'm exactly like that. I find that whole like one on many situation to be really difficult. Yeah.
Hard. Yeah, it totally is. Agreed.
Yeah, so you said that you're not a huge fan of camming. What has been like the best fit for you in your 10-year career? What sort of sex work vibes with you the most?
Yeah. So I was a really good escort.
Yeah.
Escort. I was really good I did massage.
Oh,
too.
yeah?
Oh yeah, I worked house. I haven't done all forms of sex work, but I've tried and worked them like a lot of different forms of sex work. I've had madams as an escort, and I've also worked independently. I've been in houses, and it's such a wide range of like different ways their businesses are run.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, so what really worked for you about like escorting and massage?
I mean, it's just the in-person work in general. There's something like no matter what you're on, there's something about like being in the same room as someone and feeling touch and feeling whatever, and just an energy that is shared that is much easier to like figure out. It's easier to figure out what someone wants. They're bad at asking for what they want just by reading body language. So a lot of that shit just gets lost in other forms of sex work. And I also just like, I don't know. I feel like I'm just better at charming people in person. I don't know. Really, I don't know. But it is the thing that like this and like content producing are the things that I made the most money at and that I felt the most comfortable and like really like, oh, I know, I got this,
Yeah.
I'm trying. I think some of it is that versus the other stuff. I'm not much of a dancer, so I don't know what you got. And also 21 and a mess. So, yeah. And I think also being my own boss, which obviously not all escorts only work for themselves, but like at some point, and my last like incarnation as an escort, I worked independently. And I mean, that was just like, I was a whole on business. Like I definitely like consider myself like, it's weird. I actually don't like any of these terms, so I'm not going to. I was going to say career sex worker. And then I was like, I have mixed feelings about all these ideologies or not ideologies, all these terms. So I'm like, maybe not. But it was definitely like something I like really like put a lot of like work and money and whatever into that I like. I don't know. For me, it was a huge like part of my like, oh my God, this is my, had been doing sex work for 10 years. And I was like, this is like the business that I finally built. I felt it,
Yeah. So you say that you were a great escort. Like how has COVID changed that? And what have you had to do to kind of pivot your business since that started?
So I was always making porn like this entire time. I never really stopped while I'd like on and off, like, performing for companies. Like I've been pretty much consistently making my own like content for the last like 6 years. So I already had that set up. It wasn't my full income, but it brought in some money. And then when COVID happened, I had the privilege to choose not to do in-person work anymore and just launch fully into online work. Like both of my husband and I have like weak immune systems and are chronically ill, and it just didn't. It didn't feel like a choice. Wasn't with my situation, and I was able to switch over. So like, compared to a lot of other like people who were coming from the escort world, like I didn't start from fresh.
Right.
From nothing. Like I already had a porn fan base. I already had clips. I already had all of this already set up. So it was really easy for me to just like shift my attention to doing it full time. And I actually didn't realize I could. I was like, oh, I can make a whole like full living and a pretty good living just from doing this. And I didn't actually know that was a potential until this happened. So yeah, I just switched everything, and unfortunately had to retire indefinitely. Like, I'm not quite sure. I'm like, I don't think that COVID's going to be done anytime soon.
Right.
So I'm not sure. And I don't want to speak for something that, because I've had a lot of people, they're like, oh, is it just for COVID? And I'm like, well, I don't, this might be over in a year or more. Like, I don't know. I don't want to speak.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to be doing in a year. Yeah.
I have no idea. So like, so I retired, and have just been, making content. And,
you make content with your husband, right?
I do. Yes.
Was he in it before he met you, or is this something that he started because of your relationship?
Oh yeah. It was something that he started, because of our relationship. We met, and at some point I remember we were living in LA together. And at the time it was really hard for some reason. This is like in 2013. I could not make money as an escort in LA for some reason. Which is really funny because I ended up touring it years later and being fine. But like when I was living there I don't know, there's a lot that changed over time, and that could go into it. But yeah, so like wasn't able to make money. So I started working for a house, a massage house, which was like completely bonkers and one of my favorite. It's like the most like awful and amazing thing all at the same time. Imagine new age ladies that take up names of white ladies, taking the names of like Indian gods, and like thinking that they're not doing, sex work. They're doing like sacred tantra work. Like this, like
I can imagine this. Yeah.
It's not that hard to imagine.
Not that, you're like drinking, like it's like a whole thing. So I started working there. And I did well there, so I stayed there. But I was definitely like trying to get out. So like I had a friend that was making that, did camera for all the like mainstream porn, and he and I actually first started making content together.
Okay.
And so we were doing that. We did that together. We split we just split it. He like edited and like uploaded everything and did all the back end. All I had to do was show up and like perform. And then we were moving away, and he was like, hey, like take this whole thing, like do it. And I basically just asked my husband, like, hey, you wanna learn to perform and also edit video for me and do all this? And he taught himself in like a week.
Wow.
And then we started making content, and our content's gotten like better and better over the years too. So yeah, he's never like worked outside of that. We've worked with other models together, and for like my productions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
do you enjoy doing that with him?
I do. I mean, it has its pluses and minuses. Completely. I love it. And it's really fun. It's also like living and working with your partner full time, which
we know a thing or two about that.
Like so far up each other's asses, like
right.
But it's also really really awesome. And, it's our like little family's like family run business.
Yeah.
You've been doing sex work your whole life. When you met, how did that go? Like, is that, how did you work through that early on in your relationship?
I am one of those rare sex workers that's never really had a hard time dating ever.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like, I know this is not something that happens a lot. I felt lucky. And mind you, I also dated only sex workers for a long time too. But when we met on OkCupid, which is really funny because now I can't even have an account. Because we're poly. But like I either get recognized and people either know it's me and like get weird, or people think I'm a catfish.
Right.
I've heard other people say that. Yeah.
Same. I've talked to other models who can't use like Tinder or OkCupid because everybody just assumes they're like catfishing.
Yep. So like can't use that. So I'm like, it's just weird to think about. But yeah, we met on OkCupid, and then we both flaked on each other, and then ended up. I ran into him in the street. He ended up being my neighbor,
Oh,
like
cool.
moving in like right after. And so I started stripping the neighbor, and it was very, I don't know, it was very easy. Like I basically was just like, this is what I do, and if you're not down, you should leave.
That
And
seems healthy.
like, if people are too interested, I have no interest in that either.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, and it was maybe like a little, there was definitely like learning, my husband was not only like never really like, he had like made out with a stripper once, you know what I mean? Like, so like didn't know sex workers, and also like was monogamous, like a serial monogamous his entire life.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, this is what's up. And decided to like reevaluate everything that he was doing.
Well, that's cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was a really short, and the entire time. And I think what made it so easy for me that even when he did have stuff come up, it was never about me. It was always like, I feel insecure, which I think is a huge difference than like a partner that like shames, their partner, the partner. So it was easy to work through, because it was like, okay, like what's this insecurity? Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. And instead of like, you're bad.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy, and we've been together for like 7 or 8 years. I don't actually know how long we've been together, but it's like 7 years, I think. I don't know.
We had an anniversary the other day, and both of us were like, but is it today or is it tomorrow? Like, when did when did we get married, and how many years ago was that?
Yeah.
Sometimes. Some people are super into that stuff, and we kind of are like, we're still together. I don't know.
Yeah, no, same. I'm not. I had like, our wedding was a party when we had strippers. So,
oh, did you really?
We did.
That sounds great. How'd that go?
It was good. It was messy.
Messy in what way?
Mostly just like party heavy,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We rented a bar out, and like my dumb friends like ended up at some point like walking around the bar like naked, to the point where the bartender was like, I do need you to put your clothes back on. Some people fucked in the photo booth. People got mad because they were waiting outside for the photo booth. Just like
Wow.
full on like rager that didn't even last that long. It was really funny because everybody went so hard, so fast, that I think which is funny because I'm of a pretty nana lifestyle now. Yeah. Our dance was a lap dance. We both got a lap dance.
Oh my gosh, I love this. Now is a good time to hit the pause button and head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/peepshowpodcast. Even $1 a month shows us that you care and want to see Peep Show continue to thrive. Also, you can help increase our reach with a review on iTunes. I wonder how often that happens. Probably not a lot, where it's actually part of the wedding itself. It's usually relegated to bachelor parties.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Do you feel like you're just going to continue to like do a lot of clips and OnlyFans, or what does your work look like for you now?
What do I do? So I do a lot of different things. I do OnlyFans. I do many vids. I do highly suggest, if anyone is a content creator, to not put all your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I do OnlyFans, many vids. I don't really use, like, I don't update my clips for sale. That's like, I don't know. I'll generate some income here and there from old clips, but that's it. And I do Black Panther here and there too. Those are like my 3 like big things. And I use Pornhub more as a tool, but it does generate some income as well.
A tool like for building name recognition, or?
Yeah, following, getting people. It's like a funnel, and I'm actually starting to put things like because they have a couple setups. So you can upload on Pornhub. You can upload clips to be free, and you get paid per view.
Right.
You can also they also have like a clip store, so you can also sell stuff. And I'm just started playing around with actually using the clip store, and I'm like, why not? But yeah, it helps funnel to your OnlyFans. People find you. It's just like, right. I think X Videos technically is the top rated. Number one most viewed porn site in the world, but Pornhub is 2, and I think has a better name recognition.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good for that. It really is. It's a good tool. So many human beings look at that fucking website like that. It's just like for me, it's an obvious place. A lot of people have different opinions on it, and this isn't like an ad for it because I don't necessarily love Pornhub as a company, but like it is a good tool.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. So yeah, my work consists of like DMing, sexting, reading dick pics, shooting customs, shooting photos, audio clips. I'll do cam shows for members, and that kind of like encompasses it all. I said shooting content. So yeah.
How's that like? So I mean, I think there's some obvious ways in which it's different than like your work escorting, but I'm kind of curious about like, I'm actually almost more curious about the similarities. But if you want to talk about like, both the similarities and differences, I'm just kind of interesting about like, what your day looks like now compared to what your day looked like a year ago or however long.
I mean, it was also the way I was doing the work I was doing. I was a pretty like tour heavy, provider, especially living in the Bay Area. If you have fairly high rates, there used to be like a lot of work for folks with high rates in the Bay, and that slowly started to change in the last bit. And kind of like I can't tell because my rates went up as that change also went up. So like I can't really tell like what the different. I don't know, whatever. But it looks like it happened post Best of Boston more so.
Okay.
In the Bay specifically, I didn't notice that. But I'm not a native to New York. But it seemed I could travel to New York. But so a lot of the people with like on the like higher end of ratings, or ratings of
rates.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
Of rates seem to and I'm trying to think about it. I'm like, no, almost everyone I know that was like in the same realm as I like also was heavily touring. So I was like touring a lot. I'm also a complete workaholic, like insane. So I was like gone all the time. I was always traveling and always doing more and always doing this. So I was pretty much like on an airplane every couple weeks. I was not home very long. If like I remember when quarantine first started, or not quarantine, but lockdown first started, like I hadn't been home for a month and like I couldn't remember the last time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like really wild to me. So that's like
that's a big difference.
It's a big shift. I have a really hard time turning work off. So I do think that now that I'm doing like online stuff full time, I was doing both before, but I wasn't doing it full time in the same way. So like now I have a hard time not working.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that I'm still figuring out boundaries with myself, honestly, like where I'm just like, hey, we can't, you have other joys in life. Like, what are you doing? So
sounds like someone else I know.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard when you do all of your work from home. There's like no natural separation between working and not working.
Right. Because I do this thing, even if I'm like, I'm going to get high and like put on some like silly TV show or something, something brainless and whatever. I'm always like, well, I'm sitting and getting high and doing nothing else. So like, might as well, like, here I am, like, it's like 11 and I'm still like answering shit on, OF or whatever I'm doing. I'm like,
right.
And promo. That's also the thing. Like there's so much promo that goes into online work. And I mean, I did a lot too, because I like definitely was trying to create a brand. I had a weird brand as an escort because I did porn and I also offered super GFE. Like my style was not PSE.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Like, I mean, people.
So just for listeners who might not know, I think most of our listeners would, but saying girlfriend experience versus porn star experience as like two different offerings in escorting.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I'd say like it's two different styles, right? It's these like different, and it's like a little bit of a different approach. And I feel like I was kind of a blend of both, but I definitely was interested, and what I needed, like, and what I wanted was something that didn't really work with having a porn brand. Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I like didn't really work in porn all that much anymore, except for making my own stuff. And so I like definitely heavily marketed basically the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So like, I think I put in a lot of work doing that because of that. But I think I do it even more so because the whole thing is like growing a following. The more, Twitter and Instagram followers you have, the more people are going to subscribe to your OnlyFans and to your whatever. It's just like all of the shit is funneling. You're just trying to funnel people everywhere, right?
Right.
And so like that takes a lot of time,
Yeah. I think that's really interesting what you said. Was it hard to kind of redirect your in-person clients?
Yeah, it was. And I'm going to say this is also like based in like a lot of weird classist and like hierarchical bullshit. Like, I mean, right. Like, I mean, you see it now. You're seeing like all the like there's a lot of different conversations happening, but right. Like, escorts thinking that doing porn is like low class, and like
right.
clients, like there are clients, and then there's a whole bunch of clients that want to see porn stars. So like there's different graphics, and the kind of escorting and branding I was doing like was not really like vibing. So it was hard. I figured it out and I did well. I definitely like saw more porn fan. Like there was no way like I wasn't going to see porn fans, and I didn't necessarily have a problem with seeing porn fans. I just want them to know that I'm not a porno. Like that was my thing, was just like, I actually like, my style is more like, I liked getting to know people. I like doing it more of a date situation. That was my ideal. That doesn't necessarily mean that's all I did. Right.
Right.
But that was like my ideal like client was someone that was going to put like longer stuff, that was going to treat it more like a date or whatever. So like, that's, and that was my marketing, was like, always market to your ideal, like client, right? Like that's the way. So it was really complicated, and I experienced a lot of like weird shit from other workers that were like, in the same, like who shared the same clients, or like, like kind of had the same kind of branding or whatever. Like it was definitely like a thing.
Oh, can you say a little bit more about that?
I mean, it's just like classism, or not wanting to, like, or assuming things about me, or how I made, what I made or whatever, or not wanting to associate their brands with mine because mine was too porny or whatever.
I got you.
Thing. Yeah. And that stuff like exists like in, also with like, it's really weird. So in porn, I would say that like 75% of porn performers escort either on the DL or like, I'm seeing more people be out about it now, but like, it's not like this. Like,
it seems like there's been a huge shift over the last 10, maybe 15 years, where people, it just seems like there was a lot of negativity towards it 10 or 15 years ago. And now people are being much more open about it. I mean, you would know better than I would, but that's just my impression.
Oh, no, I think so. And I'd say maybe even, but I don't know. I don't know how long you've been looking. I've only been looking at the sex industry for 10 years. So I felt like it was maybe a little shorter time, but if you've been looking at stuff for like 15 years, maybe you've seen like a slower progression too.
From my understanding, a lot of people say somewhere around the 2008 recession, a lot of models started to feel the pressure to explore escorting as an option or as an alternative. There's
no way a porn star, like I'd say, like then there's no way there, unless you're a top, and I definitely know people, but no, even the people I know that like get regular work, doing porn, like they're still escorting. Like it's just not. Porn money is not, and it definitely, you're right, because the porn money is not what it was, first of all. And then there's like all of like the tube sites and like whatever. So like the porn industry in general, like kind of went into the trash, right? Like, like been suffering pretty heavily, and it, like the rates have keep going down, all that kind of stuff. But like, so it was really hard for like, porn performers to, even like ones with names, if they're not getting booked, like they're not getting booked, or if they're only getting booked a couple times a month, that's not enough to survive on. So a lot do. I do think, and I'm curious to see with the rise of OnlyFans, because content making was always around. OnlyFans is a little different. than like, let's say ManyVids clips for sale and all that kind of stuff. So I'm curious to see if at some point, I mean, it's hard to compare because also COVID, but if OnlyFans changes that because now porn performers have the ability to make money another way that's not in-person work necessarily, but have the online stuff. There were always these other avenues, but I do feel like it mainstreamed like or not mainstream, but it like got popular in a very different way than all of these other things did.
Yeah. Especially among like porn models and maybe even porn fans. I mean, maybe part of it too is just like, which clients move to that platform, and also the degree to which the pandemic has pushed clients, online as well, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I feel like you're talking about is the way that people who are doing different types of sex work view people who are doing other types of sex work. And we often like talk about this as the hierarchy. And I saw you were having a conversation the other day with somebody who primarily has done escorting, who's moved into, OnlyFans and more digital sex work, and was talking about how there's a lot of pushback from online workers against escorts coming in. And one of the things that you brought up there is that it goes in the opposite direction. So I was wondering if you wanted as well, right, that you get this from all sides. So I was wondering if you want to talk a little bit about like your experience of this or your feelings about it.
Yeah. So there's definitely someone, when I was having that conversation, someone did, I was using the term hierarchy, and I was like, did in a way that actually made really a lot of sense. And so I do want to bring it up because I think it's interesting. So Emily Warfield, who does social work and talks about sex work and all that kind of stuff, was just like, I think this is more stigma than hierarchy, because with at least what she understood was that like, hierarchy is to be about relative power and privilege. I don't see how an in-person worker would have that over a virtual worker. But basically that wasn't necessarily the term hierarchy, because there's a difference between being like criminalized and not, and there's power leverages in between that. So that is important. But there's definitely a fuck ton of stigma between, and in all groups. That's the thing. You've got the doms that like think if you use your genitals, and you've got different doms. Right. You've got full service doms that were getting shamed by the doms that like never use their genitals and be like, I don't do that. Or like, and it happens in, so porn people like look down on escorting, escorts think porn is trashy, strippers are not prostitutes. And all of these like, all these identities, a lot of time are like super overlapping. Like,
right.
But like these, I mean, that maybe that's why the stigma is there, because people feel threatened or what, I don't know what. Right. But like, that is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
In our universe.
And I guess having done so many different kinds of sex work, you've probably experienced that like internal stigma on a lot of different levels then, or you've had those kinds of interactions with lots of different sex workers then, I would assume.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, because in total, so I've dommed, done massage, escorted, done porn, made my own stuff, and done like phone sex and camming. So like,
that's like the whole gamut.
The range,
I've not been a pro sub, but I've been a pro sub on camera, but not. Like the only thing that I'm like, obviously there are different like kinds of like models for all those works and all those jobs, and I haven't done all those.
Sure.
But like, I definitely have experienced it, or like worked for madams that wanted me to hide the fact that I did porn, or others that, actually I think every madam I've ever worked with wanted to hide the fact that I did porn.
Oh, interesting.
Always gave me a different name. So,
why do you think that is?
I think it's the same. It's just like stigma of like trashy, or if it was a massage, I don't want people to think that they're going to get full service there.
Yeah,
I see.
But there's also, I think a lot of it is just like this idea of that like one is trashier than the other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stigma also in escort, but that's the thing. Like in escort world, there's plenty of people who decide to not use barriers. But a big thing that I see, and this is specifically in like, the like quote unquote high end companion bullshit like world. And I was part of it. I feel very comfortable with calling it that. But right. There's there's stigma around porn performers because we don't use barriers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also a thing.
Yeah.
So we test like crazy, but yeah.
But they test. I mean, they happen. Like I
I know.
somehow like didn't never, but I never worked full time. But like it does happen. But like there's protocol and there's procedure, and also like fuck you,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about a lot of different things, but for the most part, they've been pretty good at like, keeping track of, HIV, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe less so with herpes or something, but.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, it's great. And I mean, if you want to talk about herpes, it's like 1 in 3 people. You like put your toddler in kindergarten, they're probably going to get herpes from one of their, like the mouth sores, like.
Yeah. Right.
It's just like such a. Sorry, I use that example because that's how my sister started getting, like, this stuff is just like everybody has this stuff. And that's the thing though, like these things and even these acts like do exist also in that world. It's just like hush hush, right?
Yeah.
Talked about. And there's a lot of like internalized shame and stigma and all that kind of stuff. And people get weird, right? Like,
yeah. Yeah, so I know you also have an art career and that you've used comments from like online comments from your porn and things to incorporate those into your art. Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Years ago at this point, I just started collecting specifically like either like horrendous or really creative hate mail.
Yeah.
Since I wasn't like being pushed by many companies, I just built my own following, like on Tumblr and like on whatever, and just like kind of like did all that. So I was like heavily into like Tumblr culture. As I was like building up Arabelle and all that kind of stuff. And Tumblr's like just like Reddit, or not Reddit, but like a curious cat. That's it. I don't know if you've seen like people and answering anonymous questions on So like, there's the anonymous questions and it just would get brutal. And it used to be really hard on me. Like, people would say her. I mean, it wasn't just like you're ugly. It'd be these horrific things, from like, I hope you get cancer, like they cut your tits off, to like,
Jesus.
Oh my God. Yeah.
like how I like belong to be gassed with the other Jews. It was just
gosh, I'm sorry.
really, really
That's awful.
Yeah. And I was 22 and like, like just not really, like was not really able to process that stuff super well.
Yeah.
And like nobody, first of all, it's hard to, period. And then
Right.
skills. But I started saving them. And then, I don't know, there was an art project, or there was a sex worker art show that was coming up, and I had been asked, and I've like always dabbled with art stuff. I went to school for a really short amount of time for like creative writing. And so like, I've always done that kind of thing. So I was just thinking about it. And then all of a sudden I just had the idea of like, oh, I finally have a use for these comments. And so I decided to take photographs of myself reenacting everything that they were saying to me, or my interpretation, of that. So all the whole like exhibit series, which I am still working on, is basically, you have the quote and then there's like the image of like response or representation of that.
Yeah. Did it feel like it was healing for you to kind of reimagine that or reinterpret it? Or was it really hard to go through all of those comments?
Now, no. And when I was doing it, I think it was really cathartic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was definitely a very like healing experience. And, at this point, I think also with like just time and age, like that stuff doesn't affect me in the same way. But yeah, I mean, it was a way to like process all that and just like vomit it out. And, this was the thing that I loved. When I did the art show, I was able to sell a couple of those. And I just had a moment where I was just like, I just made money off my hate mail. Like,
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, I actually had, I mean, not the same, not in that way, but a similar sort of experience where we had a documentary that showed some of our like porn in it, that got a huge, that kind of went viral in ways that I didn't expect it to, which also meant that you had like all these trolls who were, you know, attacking me, mostly for like a bunch of like fat phobic stuff. And, but it was really, really brutal. Like, I had to write about it. And when I did that, I had to write about it, I mean, just for my own processing and going through and like pulling all of those comments out and collecting them in a way that I could then weave them into a little story was really hard, but I didn't know how else to like manage that.
Right. It's pretty like, I don't, it's really, I think people are always just like, oh yeah, just don't listen. And it's like, I don't think people really understand what like that experience is,
Right. And yeah, and it's also so public, that being trashed in public by a ton of people in very visible ways is also hard.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's like, it's a form of like degradation, I think,
Yeah, and you can ignore it, but then you're like, yeah, but all my fans also just saw that somebody is saying really publicly that, I don't know. One thing that stood out to me that I'm thinking in my head now is like somebody said that I look like I drink like a jar of mayonnaise every day for breakfast. And I was like, Jesus, like, but that kind of stuff sticks in your head. And you're like, I wonder if now they've put that into other people's heads because everybody can see it.
Right. Totally. Oh, well, if this makes you feel any better. Someone told me I looked like a liquor store that a fat Arab, also racist, thank you.
Yeah.
That a fat Arab chain smokes in. So
Oh my God.
I'll be a liquor store and you can eat mayonnaise with me.
Yeah. They're so awful. But then I'm like, but why did 5 million people watch this? I mean, like, they must have liked it.
That's the thing, but it's so easy. And there's a difference between being like, you're ugly, and then like having these like really descriptive, like what they do, these really descriptive and degrading like things, right? Not like, oh, like gross, Like, it's easier to like kind of just ignore that, something small like that. But when someone like really goes out of their way to just like, I'm gonna make you like not a human anymore, like it's
right.
It's hard, and it takes like it's just after years of abuse that it just doesn't do much. But I had a moment recently, like I haven't had that in a while, and then like I had heard that a lot of models were going on Reddit to like push, and I was like, I don't know if this is for me because I do have an established thing, but I also like can, I always feel like there's room to grow.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, fuck it, let's try it if it makes a change. And like as I'm building it, like I think at some point, I like posted a photo of like one of my tattoos. So it wasn't even a porn thing. And like just a million dudes just being like, that's awful, blah, blah, blah. And I like,
holy
right.
I got that too with my tattoos. All these comments about like, those are trashy tattoos. And I'm like, they are not. What?
Fuck off. You think that? Like, I'm good. Great. You don't like my tattoos? Like, keep it to your... I just had never felt the need to like write to someone and tell them that I thought they sucked.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm just like, oh wow, like I've just never just been like, I'm just gonna stop by and tell you something really mean, and then just keep going,
I've never felt the need to give negative comments on anyone's tattoos, especially not strangers on the internet.
Yeah, no. But then the whole project was basically about like, showing like, I don't know, when I was reenacting what they said, I'm like, this is exactly what you just said to someone, FYI. Like,
Right.
So
yeah.
like, the images are hard to look at. And I'm like, this is what you've said. And I think like having like an image of like, okay, this is actually like first what you're writing to someone. And also it's just like kind of a mirror to those people. Like,
yeah.
This is coming like this. Yeah. And I think it's way easier to do that kind of thing online. Right. Like that's
right.
I think hate mail has changed with the internet.
Yeah. No, I think that's really powerful to make you're forcing them to confront what they're doing.
Yeah, what they're saying, Oh,
exactly.
Yeah. So if people are interested in your work, where can they find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Arabelle Raphael. You can check out my porn at Arabelle Raphael on OnlyFans and on ManyVids. I always forget I actually have a membership site too. And you can also go to www.arabelleraphael.com. So there's a lot of different ways you can watch me get it on. So.
Great. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks for sharing, Arabelle.
For having me.
Yeah, it was nice to hear about your career and your journey.
Thank you for joining us for yet another episode of the Peep Show podcast. I'm PJ Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at PeachSage.
And I'm Jessie Sage, and you can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or at jessiesage.com.
We would like to remind you that we have a Patreon account and would appreciate your support. Please visit patreon.com/peepshowpodcast. Our music is courtesy of Joe Kennedy. The show was produced by Jessie and PJ Sage.
Signing off. Have a great week.